Good morning, everybody. Keith Engle here. TGI Sports Talks. Are you curious? I'll be joined in a few minutes by my co-host, the Mad New Yorker, Carlos Chavez. Welcome, everybody, on this beautiful Good Friday. If it's something you celebrate, it's a holy weekend, obviously, and we hope you have a healthy and happy one as you go through it with your loved ones and friends and whoever you might be spending it with. Listen, great interview last night. It aired with Chuck Foreman, former great Minnesota Viking, Miami Hurricane, short-time Patriot. It's a fun interview. He went through a lot of things. The most pointed moment of the interview is when I asked him if he belonged in the Hall of Fame, and he said, "You're damn right I do." It's a little like a Few Good Men scene, but he was very passionate about it, very open, and it was an enjoyable interview. I also put one in the can last night with Irving Fryer, former Patriot great, Miami Dolphin great, Eagle. Had a great career. Another guy I think belongs in the Hall of Fame. Had some very highs and lows in his career, in his personal life, and he's very open about it all. And that will air next Saturday. And, of course, this weekend we'll have the Sunday Stream of Consciousness. We'll start cutting back a little bit on the college sports huddle for a bit as we've hit a bit of a lull. We'll talk about some college baseball. We'll talk about the offseason and football as we approach the new season. But we'll cut that back a little bit. And listen, we're being seen live. I should have said this on the open on Northeast Streaming Sports, simulcasting on Let's Talk Sports. We're also, obviously, you're seeing us on TGI Sports Talk and wherever else you may see us live. Twitter, YouTube. You can catch these shows at any point in time. Please like and share the show, guys. I don't do it enough because I don't like to plead. But, we're moving towards that 2,000 follower mark, and it's a big mark for me. So let's get that. Let's push us over the hump. Everybody get out there and follow the show and invite your friends. So today we're going to get into, and as I said, the Mad New Yorker will join me in just a second. Today we're going to get into some NCAA basketball. We'll talk a little bit about this UConn run, but what I want to dive into mostly is myself. I believe UConn now has moved into the all-time Bluebloods list. We'll talk about who those programs are. And today's Bluebloods list, basically going back to, say, 2010-ish. So the current Bluebloods list is compared to the all-time Bluebloods list. Major League Baseball, we'll talk about the Mets and Yankees a bit. Major League Baseball as a whole, who's off to a hot start, who's not, and if anybody should be worried at this early stage in the game, roughly 7 games in for everybody. And the time allowing, we'll get into some NFL chatter. The whole nonsense over Belichick and Mac Jones, is he going to trade him? Is he going to trade him? Is he going to? Everybody in the organization loves him, but one guy. And then maybe even Aaron Rodgers. Is there a new suitor? The rumors are there's a new suitor. It would behoove the Packers to float that rumor, by the way. But we'll get into all of that. And first, let me welcome in our co-host, the Mad New Yorker. Good morning, Carlos.
Hey, happy holidays, everybody. Happy spring holidays.
We're at Met after.
It's opening day, man. It's opening day, so we're getting ready to go here in a few hours. So
yeah, opening day got washed out yesterday. That's unfortunate, but it looks like a nice day today. Are you going to the game?
Yep, I'm taking my son. We've been going to this for the last few years. And this year also I got a few Yankee games to go to, so trying to balance it out.
Another guy who can't pick a team. Good morning, Alex Simpson. How are you?
Hey, if New York wins, I'm good. That's all that happens,
It's funny. Alec is trying to get himself into baseball, and we'll dump into baseball a little bit. We're going to talk some NCAA, but Alec's been trying to get into baseball, and the two teams I told him to jump on now are the Diamondbacks and the Mariners, and neither one's off to a great start. The Mariners are 2-5, not a great start for them, but hang in there, Alec, if you did take my advice. Anyway,
I didn't finish the game yesterday. Did the Diamondbacks beat the Dodgers? Did they come back?
Yesterday, did they win this game? I don't think they did.
I had to go to bed. I couldn't finish watching that game, but the Diamondbacks, the young guys that they had on that team were fighting back, and I think
let's take a quick look.
I think they're going to be okay. So
for giggles, Dodgers 5, Diamondbacks 2.
Yeah. So
anyway. Yankees and Mets, I think, both postponed yesterday, so they'll get back in action today. It is going to be nice here. Let's talk some NCAA. Let me get the right banner up here so everybody knows what we're chatting about as we get started. I don't know how I got a draft thing in there. Good grief. Here we are. I went down too far. So UConn with a very impressive win. Although San Diego State, by the way, fought back bravely, I thought, Monday night. They cut this game to 4 or 5 points with only 6 minutes left, and UConn just blew them out of the building.
Yeah, for that game, I feel like San Diego State just quit trying to attack the basket, and we're looking for their 2 or 3 players to try to pick up the game. And when you're in that point, you just got to go towards and do what you can to reach the net, man. You can't depend on anybody. Everybody should go towards the goal. And UConn, their defense was stout and it held up. And but I'm sure if San Diego would have just went more with an attack of like, because they did that to get back to the game, and then they went away for it at like around 5:45, 6 minutes. They just started shooting 3-pointers to try to catch up and make it even more of a game. But they should have just kept going with what they were doing, and they ran out of gas. And that's a team that they deserve to be in the championship. They just didn't have enough. And UConn, credit to Hurley and outstanding job by the older players that they have, because those guys were the glue that kept everything together. Because the young players were a little bit too inconsistent right now, but with this championship, they're gonna build off and they have a good core of young guys. They have like 4 guys that they'll be able to keep this next season. So
I would think the only guy they're in danger of losing possibly is Sangano, but I don't even know if he'll go. So they could keep their core. I don't know about the seniors, but most
of them were like sophomores.
Andre Jackson, who's the glue to that team. You talk to every coach that's played this team, he doesn't have the gaudiest numbers. He didn't have gaudy numbers Monday night, but he's the key that keeps that team moving and makes it go. So he's a local boy here in the Capital District area.
Yeah, and then he said the only reason that he stuck around was that he believed in Hurley and what Hurley was letting him know, that he's going to be the guy, and that he's going to play him as much as he wants to play and be a distributor and part of that team. So
that type of unselfish play goes unnoticed today because everybody wants their number so they can go to the NBA and get their money. But he's the kind of guy who'll do the dirty work.
If he puts the work in, I kind of see him being. Now I don't like to compare players, but just the mentality of being like a Chris Paul. Like Chris Paul didn't look too. There's games where he looks like one of the best point guards in the world, but then there's games where you don't see him in the numbers and what he does, but he moves the ball. He keeps the offense moving. He even goes on defense. So now that Chris Paul's older, you don't see that as much, but and all because of all the injuries. But if he can stay in the gym and work on his shot and be more consistent, he can make more waves than he has already made. So
we'll see what happens with him next year. He'll obviously be back. I don't think he's a guy who's going to get drafted in the NBA, but he'll get chances in the NBA. There's only 60 or whatever. So
give him a couple more years, and then also a system that works in his favor. Again, Danny Hurley, what he does and what he's done is use his players to their ability. Things that NBA players right now, NBA coaches don't do with NBA players. So
Danny Hurley's a great story. He was content to be a high school coach his entire career, like his dad was. I think he was at St. Benedict's, if I'm not wrong, in New Jersey. And he was happy. And then Wagner called one day, and he actually went 25-6, I think, at Wagner's last year. Nobody goes 25-6 at Wagner. Got to Rhode Island, took them to back-to-back NCAAs, which nobody does. And now he's got this UConn. He came into a UConn program that was, kind of wandering in the desert after they were in the American Conference still, the American Athletic Conference still, and they'd won a championship, a kind of a out of the blue championship under Kevin Ollie. But after that, it went kind of sour. He did a good job turning his program around in really 4 short years.
Yeah, and this is a man who was planning on and thinking and had talks of maybe leaving basketball, like especially college basketball. And listen, like he had every opportunity to go with his brother. His brother wanted him bad to join him in Arizona after what's been going on. And it's a good thing that he's set himself apart, and that he's his own. That now even though there's the bloodline of coaching in his family, he's a stalwart for under his own name. So that's good for him and his family as well.
Agreed. Good morning, CA. Good to have you with us.
Remember, this guy was in his brother's shadow while as a player. So
Bobby was a much better player, but Danny's turning out to be a much better coach. That's
I think there's still a little bit more time.
Listen, I'm not saying he's a terrible coach. He's done, he's at a tough place to play and win at Arizona State.
Yeah, but one thing about Bobby Hurley is that he has done the hard work with a lot of guys that in other places probably wouldn't have been able to, to get them where they're at. And at every coaching stop, he's been able to do what Dan has been able to do, except for one thing, and that's win. So win big.
Kind of important.
I know, but again, if you compare what Dan was able to do with the amount of players that were already at Connecticut compared to what Bobby had to bring in to Arizona State, it's kind of they're night and day. Two programs that are night and day, administrative wise and athletic wise. So
I would argue that UConn, when Danny Hurley got there, was in just as bad a shape as Arizona State. Just they were nowhere. They were finished under 500. They were not good when Danny Hurley got there. The move to the Big East, back to the new Big East, a couple of years ago, really helped UConn reestablish their identity. That school they screwed that basketball program because they want to make themselves a football school. There was no chance they were going to become a football school. That's what happened to UConn's basketball program.
The whole thing with the administration after the Kevin Ollie situation, I think was why they were trying to just focus on getting the football back into, and just turning away from the men's basketball program for a minute until it kind of just had an opportunity to
they realized where their bread and butter was.
Yeah, that's the college sports is a business that is its own entity, and it can be brutal for some
old press conferences. I love some of Jim Calhoun's old press conferences. There's a great clip. Everybody should look it up. There's a reporter asked Jim Calhoun about being the highest paid employee in the state of Connecticut, a state employee, which all basketball and football coaches are. It's not unusual.
Right.
His answers to this guy were just precious. They were awesome. Go check it out. Anyway, it was classic Jim Calhoun. The thing I wanted to dive into this morning is I think so historically, and we'll talk about today's contemporary teams too, but historically, the Bluebloods have been Kentucky, Indiana, Duke, UCLA, North Carolina, Kansas. You got 6 programs that have been Bluebloods throughout history.
Mm-hmm.
I believe now UConn fits in that discussion. They've been on the peripheral for a long time. They've won 5 national championships since 1999.
Right.
That's amazing. None of these other Bluebloods have done any of that, by the way. No. None. So I think there's now a 7th Blueblood all time. And it's unfortunate because there were some, I would say that there were some programs that were knocking on the door of the historical Bluebloods. Syracuse for a long time was very close. All-time wins, they're right up there.
Mm-hmm.
But the last, 6 years, maybe decade, they had a couple fluke runs in the NCAA, but they never, one national championship, lots of wins, but one national championship holds them back. Michigan State's kind of just outside of that realm, and a few other programs. Do you have any thoughts on the historically? We'll get into the last 10 years back to 2011ish, whatever. What are your thoughts on the history of the Bluebloods? And again, it's a made up thing, but
yeah, I mean, it's the word exists in college basketball because there was teams that, like you said, represented that word. I feel like.
And by the way, before you answer, so my definition of a Blueblood is you win a lot of games, you win national championships, and people follow you. They love you or they hate you. It can be either one. So these are the Blueblood programs in college basketball. Go ahead.
Yeah, I feel with the changing of the guard of a lot of these coaches in the last 10 years has really kind of that word will has fallen apart and doesn't carry as much weight as it used to.
Well, I will agree because when we get to the contemporary ones, it's harder to do.
Right. So even when you saw the coach go from Kansas, which I believe Kansas is a blue blood.
Absolutely.
I don't think you mentioned that team, but
No, I did. They were one of the first six I mentioned. Yep.
was it okay? So to Kansas, where the coach left,
National championships. I got to be in there.
when they left when the coach left Kansas to go to UNC, um, even that coach leaving UNC, that was like I feel like that was a straw that kind of broke the camel's back, because then it was like no coaches are going to stay in their school forever, like they used to. Like you had even Bohan got sacked a few months ago.
Mm-hmm.
I mean that's it. Like you're not going to see that stability. You're not going to see that consistency, and it's not going to the NCAA basketball is not going to be the same, and nor should it be the same for all the things that have been happening in the last 25 years. So
I don't agree necessarily with your total estimation there of Kansas, because they didn't get worse once Roy Williams left. I would argue.
No, they didn't get worse, but what happened there was changing of the guard there. And then you had kids that were coming back. Because the NCAA has always been changing rules for is they could play a 6th year if they're still going to school, and they transfer out of the school that they got their 4-year. So and then now they have NIL, and now they have and then the COVID year and all that. So
the landscape's the same for everybody, though. So
yeah, but it's different when you're a blue blood, because you're gonna get the guys who are in the top always.
But it's also hurt these teams stay consistent. I think that's why you've seen some of these historical blue bloods like Indiana, like Duke, like North Carolina struggle more. They don't have year after year of greatness, because kids don't just sit around there on the bench for 4 years and matriculate and be happy about it. They go somewhere where they can play.
Yeah, even like Kentucky, when
Kentucky is another good example.
When they changed over from Paterno to what's his name?
Patino.
Patino. I'm sorry, Patino to oh my God, his name escapes me. But the old Connecticut coach, the Massachusetts coach. What's his name?
Well, there was a couple guys in between, by the way.
Yeah, but I'm saying when that turnover, and then they had what's his name? Tubby Smith.
Tubby Smith followed Rick Pitino, won a national.
And then after Tubby Smith was
I think after Tubby Smith was Gillespie, who came from A&M and buried the program before
and then
got there. Right.
Yeah, and then when he came in there, and it was one and done. That's it. You had the 3 years in a row that they were in the they were there in the Final Four or the Sweet 16.
Worked for a while, but now that model doesn't work anymore.
No, and then but that was a model that was carried over all over the NCAA, especially the Blue Blood. Right? They were like, we'll get the top recruits, you'll be on TV, and then you'll get a high NBA draft, pick.
You know what happened with that too, and this will kind of move the conversation a bit into the contemporary Blue Blood. So, who are the best programs? Again, same criteria I just talked about. It's hard to find the national championships, though, because somebody knew winning every year.
Mm-hmm.
But what we just talked about, the one and dones, I think started to change with some of the things that we've seen, and I've talked about a lot during these recent NCAA tournaments, that teams with experience do better. They don't always win, but the San Diego States of the world, they have kids that are there 3-4 years. We saw it with Wichita State. We saw it with Butlers. We saw it with a lot of teams since 2010. And that paradigm with the one and done started to change. And really, of the really good teams, and I would consider them a contemporary blue blood, and just on the outside of all time, Villanova.
Who? Oh yeah, Villanova. Okay, that's a good one.
Jay Wright brought kids in there that weren't going to be one and dones. He would bring kids in that he knew would stay, they would be projects, and he was very successful for a long time. So I would put them on the contemporary list, and also just outside of that historical blue blood listing as well.
Yeah, I mean, I would go more with Gonzaga, because Gonzaga was tapping at the door even since the late '90s. They were like, and they had that coach there for a long time.
Been there 20 plus years.
Yeah. So I would put them in before I put in Villanova, but
hold on, back up. I will put Gonzaga in. They haven't won a championship. Villanova won 2 with Jay Wright back to.
Right. Well, I'm saying that I'm not saying as in championship teams, but as in blue blood, new blue blood type of with the leadership there and that school, keeping consistent coach, them being able to keep some of the top tier players, and or even feature top 50 players that didn't make it to the top 10, and so in the West Coast, from the West Coast. So Gonzaga was one of those teams that went from mid-major to on the up, right? And,
yeah, playing a mid-major conference, but you can't call them a mid-major program anymore.
yeah. So, but they, that was the one I saw that they did a pretty good job. And then I'm scared and skeptical to put Marquette in the mix.
That can't do it
because they wasn't consistent enough. But they had that run with Dwayne Wade.
They had a good run there. And that might even be a little outside.
I think Marquette you put on the second tier with even with the teams that were here in the Northeast that were whatchamacall, St. Bonaventure. Yeah.
Well, they're better than St. Bonaventure.
No, I mean I'm talking about St. Bonaventure had almost 6 years that they were in the mix of being in the dance, and then they finally made it.
Yeah, but again, we're talking about the elite of the last 10 years. St. Bonaventure is a good basketball program. Hasn't sniffed an Elite Eight since 1970 when Bob Lanier was there.
Yeah, but they had so they had a few players come out in the NBA.
Let me give you my picks, and I've only got two teams that crashed the party in the contemporary listing outside of the Blue Bloods. So the new teams I have in there are Gonzaga and are Villanova. To me, UConn's still in there, obviously. They just won. They've been winning. They're back on track. They've won 5 national championships since 1999. All these other Blue Bloods we talked about, it took them 50 years to win those national championships. Mm-hmm. Duke's still in there. Duke is still one of the best contemporary programs available now. And again, can't look at championships because nobody's won more than one except Villanova in the last 10 years. So I've still got North Carolina, UConn, Duke, and Kansas in my contemporary Blue Bloods, and I add Gonzaga and Villanova to the list.
Yeah, but now that Jay Wright's not there, there hasn't been.
That will fall backwards. We're talking today, right? They've had one bad year in the last, decade and a half, and I'm not going to penalize them for that.
Okay, so that list seems about right. And the SEC, it's always been Kentucky, right? Always in the right.
Yeah, it will be until there's been teams that are upstarts. It's funny. The SEC always looks like a great league, but they flame out. Unless it's Kentucky, they flame out, and as you go down the tournament or even early in the tournament, they flame out early. The Tennessees of the world, the Auburns of the world, Alabama.
Is Texas too much in turmoil with what they've been doing to be putting in that blue blood? Because they've won a couple of championships. They've been in championship runs.
They won no championships. They've been only in one final, I believe.
Right. Well, they've been in the mix for.
Yeah, definitely. They're a good team, good regular season team. Lots of wins. That's one of the criteria. I also don't think people care about. You remember that last category I said? They've got appeal, whether it's good or bad. People love them or hate them. That's why North Carolina, Duke can maintain their list, even though they have some up and down seasons now. They do still win, and people either love or hate them.
I mean, in college, it seems like the powerhouse, the blue blood, kind of always have a football team to piggyback as well, or to kind of balance them out.
Not necessarily.
With Connecticut, is their women's basketball team is outstanding and will be outstanding for years to come.
But not one of the historical Blue Bloods we just talked about has ever won a national championship in football, or even really been close, quite frankly. Kentucky, Indiana, Duke, UCLA, North Carolina, Kansas.
But Duke, yeah, I mean, but I'm saying is they have a program, a football program that kind of.
Gonzaga doesn't even have a football program.
The piggybacks off of them, so Gonzaga does not. But
yeah, so these teams are the teams. They're the big generator at their school. I mean, I shouldn't say that. I mean, even in in the Big Ten, Indiana still generates a bunch of money for the university. But historically, it's been the basketball team that's carried the weight there, not the football team. That's the interesting thing again about the Blue Bloods. They aren't carried by the football program, which a lot of teams and teams like Texas and Alabama, And and some of these other teams we say can't get over the hump. It's because one of the reasons is they can't get out of the shadow of the football program. That's part of the problem.
Yeah, it's either one or the other. It's either basketball team and is great, and their football team is, or they don't have a football team, or it's a football team that's good and they can't get out of the shadow. Like so,
Right.
But you know, your list is pretty fair. I would hold off on Villanova, but that's just because
to me they're at the top of the contemporary blue blood list because they've won 2 national championships.
Yeah, are kids fighting to be on that team? Like kids fight to be on UNC and Duke because for the last 20 years they've been, that name's carried a lot of weight.
I would argue that while Jay Wright was there, a lot of kids would choose that school over others. Now that might be a problem going forward. Well, we have to see, right? They got off to a horrible start this past year, and then kind of rebounded, but not soon enough to get themselves a berth.
I think that's what a bloodline is too. It's like are kids fighting to be in that program, and if they're not fighting to be in a program to wear those, to wear those shoes and wear that uniform as well. So that's part of it, because it's about brand. The brand means a lot, right? So
you know what, the brand of the school means a lot, and the brand of the coach means a lot. So the coach, right? And again, Jay Wright leaves, it gets a little harder to get names to come to Villanova. But all of these schools that we've talked about historically have had coaches. Even today, let's talk about today. North Carolina.
Hubert Davis.
This carries a little cachet, but not as much as Roy Williams did. So they've struggled a bit the last couple of years.
Yeah, but
I think Duke will be okay. John Shire did well enough in his first year that I think they will continue and maybe even get better now recruiting. The last couple of years with Coach K might have been tough because nobody knew if it'd be his last year or not. I think he did a good enough job. Mark Few, that's how he gets kids. That's what brings kids to Gonzaga. But the reason is they go to Northwest Washington, except for the coach. So the coach and Bill Self, again, the names recruit themselves, so.
Yeah, I mean, and I feel bad for Hubert Davis because they keep saying that he's on the
how can he not be
on the hot seat? But I'm like, let this give this guy what he needs and he'll be all right. So
do you really think that North Carolina isn't giving Hubert Davis what he needs to succeed? What else does he need? He's got one of the historic programs in college basketball. He's got some of the best facilities in the country. He's in a great spot, there in Raleigh, Durham area. How can you? What's he need?
In the last 2 seasons, though, he had a few guys have gotten injured in the wrong time. And then after that, there's no depth. So
well.
That's
as we've seen, and we talk about this a lot, as you've seen, and if you watch this NCAA tournament, nobody's got a lot of depth. They're playing 7 guys, 8 at the most. I looked at the box score from Monday night, and there was a lot of ones in there where they put guys in at the end of the game to get them, off the bench and get them a little TV time. But most of them were going 7 deep, and that's it.
Yeah.
So
if you can go 8 deep, you have a championship team.
And by the way, that's another thing the transfer portal has affected because the kids years ago when all these teams we're talking about and others, right? All these blue bloods and the guys who were close, the teams that are close to being it, their second 5 could beat a lot of teams' first 5. That's not the case anymore because kids don't sit on the bench. I'm going to leave North Carolina or UConn or Villanova anywhere, and I'm going to go someplace else and play. I don't care if it's Wichita State, who had a great run there a few years back, or the Loyolas of Chicago. They'll go and play, and that's why it's hurt the Blue Bloods a bit and helped the second tier teams as you talked about. So again, maybe that's good though.
I would give Hubert Davis 2 more years just to kind of.
Yeah, he's going to get time. I think he'll get time. I'm just not sure he's going to do it. I mean, last year they got to the Final Four, but they got to the final, right? But they did not have a great season. They got hot and they got healthy, and injuries had a lot to do with it, and it had a lot to do with this year. But again, that only goes so far. Everybody has injuries, so you got to find a way to get past that stuff. And the ACC is much more parity than it ever had before.
Yeah.
So
I mean. Those Duke, UNC, those are going to be the teams that are going to keep shining no matter what because of Coach K, and then you have UNC because of Jordan, right?
Oh yeah,
You know,
absolutely. All
even
right.
though they have had more players than Jordan, you see UNC in the number 23 everywhere. When you think about Nike and what they do with and with those colors too, and to keep it flashing in front of the young people. So
Yeah, fortunately, they haven't come out with a black uniform yet, like everybody else has. I don't. Maybe they haven't. I haven't seen it. By the way, we're talking about the ACC. There's a great 5 or 6 part documentary on the ACC network. If you have it, it's all about the history of the ACC tournament. First conference tournament there ever was in college basketball. First conference to say, I don't care who wins a regular season. Whoever wins this tournament is going to get our NCAA bid. At a time where leagues only got one bid. It's very, very interesting. If you're interested in ACC basketball or college basketball history at all, watch this miniseries. It's really, really good.
all right, I'm gonna check it out.
Yeah, I'm just about. I think I'm up to the last episode here, so it's really good. Switching gears, Major League Baseball is off to a start. We got a week under our belt, 7 games for most of the teams. The Yankees off to a pretty good start, 4-2. Mets a bit uneven at 3-4 because the Mets got a lot of problems right now.
Are you surprised that the Tampa's 6-0 right now?
They're one of the surprises for me this first week.
Undefeated.
I did not see this. I still think the Blue Jays and the Yankees are the class of the division. I think the Yankees look at 4-2 is not a bad start. You've carried that out through the year. You've won 100 games. So
I think it's way too early to try to decipher who can stay consistent. And
I'm not picking winners based off this last week.
Yeah, definitely not. If you're trying to bet hard and try to figure it out, this is not the opening week is not the week to do it.
There are trends that you can find that, again, I'm more likely to look for disturbing trends the first year than really, say, oh, this guy's so hot that, he's going to hit 70 home runs. That's not going to happen.
I mean,
the Mets worry me. Again, I've been a proponent, maybe more so than Met fans like yourself, of Buck Showalter in this team. But with Verlander already out and Scherzer's just gotten lit up his first 2 starts, does this team need to worry? To me, and nobody's hitting except Alonso, and his batting average isn't there. He's hit for some power.
Right.
Senga's who's really a positive on this Met team? Senga pitched really well.
The most positive thing on the Mets right now, and I'm gonna keep saying that, is that they're having the opportunity for the young players to come up and play. Right now, they're gonna recall Alvarez because
is he gonna play though?
Huh?
Is he gonna play?
Alvarez? Yeah, because the catcher's out.
Which catcher got hurt?
Navarro, yeah.
Okay, I missed that news. Okay.
Yeah, so Alvarez is going to come up. They want to bring on Batty, but Batty has that finger issue. They're kind of want to be conservative with him.
Be up. I also think they're trying to hold down his service time a little bit.
That's another thing too. It's just ridiculous. But because they're the thing with who they have on third base. Everybody's name is escaping me right now.
Escobar,
yeah. With Escobar being on third base, they're only playing him. They can't play him when they don't pitch him. They don't play him when there's like lefties on the lineup. So,
doesn't he hit right-handed?
No, I'm sorry. They don't hit him when there's righties. They don't. There's times that they don't play him. I can't remember which it is, but so.
I think he'll be up, and he'll be I think he'll be a big part of this team before the season's out. Yeah.
So they're gonna bring him up. So, and it's the thing is now who is their DH? What are they doing with that?
Well, there's like one guy. There's another guy who's off to a decent start, by the way. Tommy Pham and limited bats. He's off to a pretty good start. I guess most of his damage was done in one game, I guess, but. Still, he's off to a better start than some. You are the eternal pessimist when it comes to your teams, Carlos. Do you think this? Do you not see some danger signs with the old guys hurt?
No, I told you straight up when they got Verlander, that was a wrong move for them. They should have got 3 or 4 more young pitchers. They should have brought up the guys that were pitching that were in the minors and work on those guys. Give them confidence and put them in the game. Now they're playing McGill because they have to play McGill. And they're playing Peterson because they have to play Peterson, and Quintana's out for as long as he gets recovered. So I would say let's just put him on the 40 day DL.
30, I think he is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So and then even with Sugar being out for the season, it just those things are going to happen on every team. The problem with the Mets is that it happens with most of the team when it happens. Even the last 2 years, they were one of the teams aside from the Padres that had the most injuries, had the most lineup changes, and
You
that's
know what? Baseball today, though, everybody's getting hurt.
right. So
Train, you got to get through that stuff. It's not an excuse for losing.
no, and that's why your young players have to be ready to go, and they have to, and they play a huge part of your season now, and the Mets have like in three positions, some of the top 20 players in every position, in three positions, and they can do it. They just have to make sure that they make the moves at the right time. If they keep holding out, then they don't get these kids in. They get less and less experience, and when you need them, they're not going to have that confidence that they need to. But when it happened last year, and we talked about it, even with the Yankees, like go ahead and get rid of Torres, get the players that you need, get him off because he's not going to be in and out of your lineup, because of this and that, whatever reason. And the Mets the same thing. They didn't move up these guys. They have these guys sitting there, and you don't move them up at the right time. And when it matters, they're not gonna be a huge effect on you. When they moved up Alvarez to do for the hitting, he had maybe two bad games. On the third game, he got a hit, and then a home run. But then again they didn't play him for a game, and then they played him after that. And he just didn't have consistency and being in the game and hitting. And for a young player, it's important for them to get consistency, whether they do good or not. I don't think any young player or any baseball player goes in thinking they're going to be good. They just want to go in there and get as many opportunities as possible. So, I even saw this thing last night about Reggie Jackson. I don't know if anybody's got a chance to see that.
Saw it last weekend. Yeah.
Yeah, where he was like, he
Right.
didn't come into the majors saying he got to hit a home run. He just came in and said, I got to do the best I can to make sure I stay in the majors. And that's and that's already enough pressure on a player. So.
Just to talk about that documentary for a second, I had some great hopes for it, and it was good. But I saw an interview with Reggie before it, and he said one of his major concerns about how he would come off was that he had no control. Watching that, I would think Reggie Jackson produced, directed it, and did everything because they made Reggie look pretty good in that documentary and better than he probably should have. I like Reggie, don't get me wrong, but I think his faults are pretty evident, and they didn't really make him they didn't shine a light on those a lot.
Well, the one thing I will say about that is that as much as he didn't look like he was in the wrong, all the opportunities that he's had and the way and where he's at now kind of seems to line up where he was an odd man looking in as much as he was the best person to be on the field at the moment and even to be a coach or owner or whatever. The story, the light doesn't shine too much off of him, but the situation is what the situation is, and people need to not like turn their head. And baseball's where it's at because baseball's where it's at.
I think some of Reggie's comments about racism in the game, and I'm not saying it doesn't exist, believe me, but I think Reggie Jackson isn't the guy to be well, maybe he is the guy to be talking about it because he wasn't persecuted, maybe in the minor leagues, but when he got to the major leagues, he was not treated like,
again,
one of the slaves on the plantation.
No, I mean, again, the situation in baseball, it is what it is, and the guys who've gone through it, generational, have different experiences. Reggie came in a time where there was already a precedent set about Black or African American players playing baseball, and he was one of the best. And he didn't have to go through the situation that all the other players had to go through because of where he played.
Well,
The first place he played was in California, which he said was more liberal, right? So he didn't have to, and he said even though it was liberal, there were still situations in ownership that he felt like it could have gone better, and then or they could have treated him better. And then he went to the Yankees, where again he might have been treated great by the owner, but he wasn't treated great by the coach. Nor did him and the coach have a great relationship. It could have gone both ways. I don't know.
Because the manager didn't want him. That's the only reason. Billy Martin wasn't a racist.
Like he said in the beginning of that actual documentary, though, Reggie said that this is my perspective. So if Martin would have said his piece whenever he never had an opportunity like Reggie has now, we would see maybe something here or hear something different. But again,
you'd hear a different side of the story. That's
right.
all.
Saying what he said, even outside of Martin, and even talking to Steinbrenner at the end, his son, like, Reggie being part of the Yankees and just being part of the Yankees and not being part of Yankee management and ownership, and not given the opportunity to own a team outside of the Yankees, and ending up with the Houston Astros, says a lot about where Major League Baseball is today, man. And we cannot ignore what he's saying, because he's lived it, he's been in it, and he's a legend. He's a legend. He had to leave the Yankees to get an opportunity in the Houston Astros, man.
Well, what do the Yankees owe him? I mean, he played 5 years.
The Yankees didn't owe him anything except respect and the fact that he knows about baseball and then listen to him.
I don't disagree with that, but this isn't unique to Reggie Jackson. This happens.
No, but this is the problem. Is it's his story and he's telling it, right? And you're making it sound like, oh, he directed it and making himself look good.
I think he did. I think
as much as
it looked better than he was.
Even if there's some truth to that, because it's a documentary anyway. Even if there's the reality is baseball has and needs to still change, and it's coming.
I'm not agreeing with that at all. I'm just talking about this specific instance. That's it.
Okay. Well, I mean, so again, great documentary. If anybody gets a chance to see it,
I would not tell people don't watch it by any means. It was very entertaining, and again. I remember before I watched it, hearing Reggie say, my one concern is I don't have control, and he felt it was going to be slanted. If anything, it was slanted in Reggie's favor is all I'm saying.
I mean, I think what happens is when you're a player like in his caliber, like for instance, Ohtani right now, right? He's the best player in baseball, right? Of course, everything's going to work in his favor because he's putting out the work. He's putting out the numbers, So when you do that, you can, make it's like LeBron. If LeBron was a mediocre player and didn't average what he averaged, or the change didn't come up, then he can't say nothing. But LeBron's LeBron, and he plays how he plays now. He's off injured because he's older, but his voice wouldn't carry if he wasn't that have that all-star like.
I'll leave the Reggie conversation with the funniest thing I ever heard about Reggie's time with the Yankees, and there's many things, right? The magnitude of me, there's all this other, all things he actually said. The one thing I'll talk about, two things: the sport, and actually Reggie does talk about this very honestly about this. This is what I was going to talk about, but the sport. What was the name of the magazine? Sport magazine. The article that came out when he joined the Yankees, and he talked about, he was a star that stirs a drink. Munson can only stir it bad. Blah blah blah.
Right. He's a straw that stirs a drink.
He claimed he was misquoted, and Reggie said when they interviewed Munson, and he told about the story, and he said, "What did Reggie say?" He said he was misquoted, and he said for 300, Reggie left the F word out. 300 effing pages, he was misquoted. So, anyway, the one I want to tell you was Mickey Rivers one time during the midst of all the chaos, and you're maybe too young to remember to have lived through the chaos of the 77, 78 Yankees. They won championships, but it was chaos every day. One day, when everything was going on and crazy, the reporter was talking to Mickey Rivers, Yankee center fielder, and also a black man, by the way, just to make the context a little better so it doesn't sound bad. They asked him, they said, we're talking to Reggie, and Reggie over here says he's got 137 IQ. And Mickey says, out of what, 1,000?
Oh, wow.
I think it was hilarious. It speaks about Ricky. That was Mickey, too. Or he didn't, I doubt Mickey knew exactly a high IQ was. So, and I'm trying to get Mickey on my interview show, so I'm not bad-mouthing you, Mickey. It's a very funny story.
That was a lot of anybody who likes baseball or wants to learn about Reggie Jackson and Mr. October should watch I believe should watch the documentary and just.
I don't say don't watch it. No.
And just you see what his life has gone through in baseball through his eyes, right? So
there are a lot of great books you can get about his time in Yankee history through that whole mini dynasty, right? And they're books that are written from both perspectives, or many different perspectives, I should say. And you can get the whole story if you can. You got to read them all to get the whole story.
Right.
Anyway, we got sidetracked a little bit. What are your other takeaways from Major League Baseball here in this first week?
The Yankees Aaron Hicks got to figure out if he's going to play baseball or talk about playing baseball. Like,
Aaron Hicks is not going to play baseball in New York much longer.
He just, he doesn't need to comment about anything, man. Like, just play baseball right now. Not to say that don't use don't use the pulpit that's given to you, but come on, calm down, man. Like, it's harder. It's harder on any athlete to have or say anything, expect a lot, and not put out any kind of statistics that are positive. And not just showing up to the game and being in part of the game and say, okay, he was an outfielder or he was a pitcher or he was a third base. No, go out there and do what you do and do it to the best of your ability. And everything will kind of take care of itself, especially in baseball. If you're playing well, you're definitely going to stay on the field, right? If you're not playing well, you're eventually going to get off the field and eventually find your way down to downtown to the minors, right?
He might be looking to talk himself out of town because this guy got his contract, which is a pretty good contract for Aaron Hicks, by the way, off of one good season. He hasn't been healthy for an entire season other than that one season, and he hasn't played well except for that one season.
I mean, he's played with your best player on the Yankees team, and your best player on the Yankees team is not even in baseball right now. Don't say nothing if you don't produce anything.
What are we talking about? Best player is not there anymore?
Yeah, your best player on the Yankees.
Well, the best player in the Yankees is still there.
No, your favorite player on the.
Well, that's Bobby Mercer. He's been dead for 20 years.
No, I'm talking about the young guy who talked himself out of a job. Yeah. I'm not going to say his name because if I say his name, it'll get red hot and heated.
I don't know why I'm having a brain fade here. Who the hell are we talking about?
Oh my God. Now I just forgot his name. That he went to the Cubs.
Oh, Clint Frazier. Jesus Christ. Shut up, Clint Frazier. Where are you now? You're not even in baseball for crying out loud.
And he's still more than Rob. And he still will send out like little tweets and comments down there. I'm like,
go. You got so many chances with the Yankees. Oh my God. Good morning, Robert Butler. How are you today from Sports Scopes? Check out Robert's show. Carlos is there often. I was here last Wednesday night. Always enjoy spending time with Roger.
We're talking about a lot of stuff. We geek it out. Techno geeks.
So anyway, welcome to the show this morning, Robert. Thanks. And again, I didn't go off too long on Clint Frazier. See, I got out of the way in about 15 seconds.
But I got you huffed and puffed already.
Jesus, that guy just needs to shut up.
Even Reggie said something about that in the documentary about people having an opportunity to say things. But players they have right now they have Twitter and they have social media, but some. What I like about a lot of players is that they don't say anything for weeks because they're playing their game, right? But if you hear from a player every day, you just got to be like, come on, relax a little bit.
Speaking of shutting up, let's move on and talk a little bit about Aaron Rodgers. This week, the news came out that there may be another team involved now. The Jets, listen, and we've but we talked about which teams got leverage here, the Jets or the Packers. Packers have no leverage.
None.
But suddenly the 49ers, and there's a mystery team. I believe it's the 49ers, have come up with the conversation of maybe being interested in Aaron Rodgers. Part of me thinks this is the Packers maybe trying to create some leverage with the Jets because they have none with him or with Rodgers or the Jets. And it's getting late. I think they got to get this done before the draft. Do you think that there's a realistic possibility another team is involved here?
You know what I'll do because of the juju that the Jets have with with always picking great picks for the first round. They should just give the first round pick to the Packers and get it over with. What have your first rounders done lately anyways to be saying that I want to keep this pick? If you don't turn your first round pick into multiple picks in the NFL draft, you already lost in the Russian relay of draft picking anyways. Your first rounders aren't always the best pick that you make anyways. So
they're not the picks that win and lose you championships, by the way.
So you're struggling so much with this idea. It's like your luck is so great. It's so great that I'm okay with the Jets saying take the first round pick and do whatever you want with it, because it hasn't ever boiled down to anything that has been helpful to help the Jets get any championship type of caliber team going. Maybe when they drafted like the old linemen in the early 2000s, but that still took a few more seasons.
But even if you were just to take your theory and say that's right, by the way, they did a pretty good job of the draft, other than Zach Wilson, maybe. And again, we got to.
Yeah, but they got multiple picks.
They just drafted Garrett Wilson. They drafted a kid out of Florida State who's going to be a monster. They drafted Sauce Gardner. These are all first-round picks.
Okay, but they also, again, were they in the playoffs last year?
They would have been with a quarterback. No.
Here we go. Well, the quarterback was a first round pick.
Again,
Yeah,
they were again away from contention.
Look, I think a lot of teams, they just huff and puff, and they're like all excited about the first round pick. And a lot of these teams end up trading these guys.
Well, then they need to keep the pick and trade it elsewhere. If your theory is accurate and you think they can't pick anyway, they'll make a bad pick regardless. I would trade the pick. You don't need to give it to the Packers because they have no leverage to hold out. And the Packers have already said that pick is not necessarily holding up the trade. Now, I don't know what is.
Yeah, I think that they're saying that so they don't look greedy. They don't want to look like they're trying to make out on a Rodgers deal that right now isn't like made out for them to.
No, to me, they'd be lucky. They'd be lucky to get a second and some, couple of fourths or something because they don't have any leverage here, none.
And they keep saying that because they know at the back end that they know that Love isn't really the quarterback that they want anyway. So,
but that doesn't matter because they can't bring Rodgers back.
No, they can't. And they're stuck with a quarterback that might be mediocre at best.
So they got two choices. They got three choices, right? They can let this play out, and they're going to have to cut Rodgers because he can't come back to the team, and they got to pay him. They can trade him, in which they'll get something back and not exactly what they want.
Right.
Or they can let him retire, which he's not going to do. He's not going to retire and give up $50-some million. He's not going to do that. So I think they're screwed, and they're going to have to bite the bullet before the draft here, I think, and make this trade.
I mean, look at the end of the day, if Rodgers says he wants to play in New York, then that's where he's going to end up. The people in the management have to make it happen for the Jets. I'm sure there's like little interns trying to figure out compensation, how it'll work for every draft pick or whatever they give up, and they're doing the math. But look, you could take $10 million and make $30 million somehow or another in the NFL easy. And I don't know how, but you fudge the numbers enough, and things happen in the NFL. So
well, the Jets got to get this done because they're going to need it and to get into camp and work after the draft.
It's almost much ado about nothing because even if you like my thing and what I've said is even if you have Rodgers, you still got you're still missing a few players to facilitate and get yourself into a better team. Like you don't just because you have Aaron Rodgers, you have the opportunity of being better, but you don't necessarily, it doesn't make you a playoff team.
You still got to win on the field. Yeah. If he's Aaron Rodgers in the drama, and again, I said all along, this whole thing could implode when he comes to New York because who knows what this guy's going to do here or say. But their best chance to contend the next 2 years is Aaron Rodgers, a quarterback, given what you have already.
I mean, Aaron Rodgers will probably win you 2 or 3 more games, but if you're losing more than you did last year, that still puts you at the same place. So.
Well, that shouldn't happen. The point is they should be better. They're good enough on defense to be in the playoffs and contend for.
Yeah, but you got to score points in this league nowadays. And I keep saying, and I've said it for the last 3 seasons, if you don't average 27 points a game, or you can't average 27 points a game, you're not going to be sniffing the playoffs or the Super Bowl.
And what do all the teams have that average 27 points or more a game?
Kickers.
They have quarterbacks. Kickers. What is wrong with you? They have kickers. Come on.
They got kickers in the back end that can fulfill the need of a quarterback that either is incapable of doing it or because of the receiving core or running game or because they can fall short.
Of all the things I've had to berate you for since you first started commenting on my show and we started this show, this might be the most ridiculous thing you've ever said. That high-scoring teams all have good kickers.
They are consistent kickers. That helps them. That helps that 21 points that you average get to 27.
Man,
you're looking at a kicker averaging anywhere from 6 to 8 points in a game.
I will say if you're relying on your kicker to win Super Bowls.
No. No, I wouldn't say that you have to rely on your kicker. I'm just saying that you have to have a good kicker.
You do, but it's not more important than a good quarterback.
You can have an average quarterback and a good kicker, and you'll be in the playoffs.
Listen, you could get the best kicker in the history of football to kick for the Jets, whoever you want that to be.
He's going to go in the playoffs.
You're not going to playoffs. You don't have a quarterback. I'm just saying. So.
Because they'll always be 2 players short of trying to do something.
God. Oh, God. I was not expecting that answer, by the way. You could have said almost anything else. You could have said the offensive lineman, and I would have agreed you more than.
No, it's like, so I say it, and I'm being facetious, like, because
God.
you know, the one other team on the other side of the stadium, the reason they won 5 games was because they had a kicker. So
And a quarterback.
what quarter? Oh, the quarterback didn't make any mistakes, but they couldn't score. The Giants did not. The Giants averaged less than 17 points a game.
Oh my God. They didn't average less than 17 points a game.
Yeah, they did.
That's not accurate.
That is accurate.
I don't believe that for a
Look
second.
it up.
I'm gonna look it up right now because I'm not. You know me, I can't let you get away with that stuff. How am I gonna figure this out? Hold on, I'm gonna go to the NFL. Let me go to the Giants. So we're talking about
Yeah.
stats.
How many points they average a game?
They scored. How would I do this
Not
here?
enough. They scored enough.
But they average more than 17 points a game.
Mm.
Where's the scoring? Touchdowns, kicking. Come on, you're not gonna give me touchdowns here? Points? Total points per game, 21.5. Is that 17?
It's closer. It's closer to 14 than it is to 21.
Yeah, right. And close only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades.
Were they in the Super Bowl?
No, they didn't win a Super Bowl. Near the Jets.
Yeah,
Near to a lot of teams. Near to 29 other teams.
So much that quarterback did them well.
All right, before we wrap it up real quick, some thoughts on this has really got me baffled. Are Belichick and Mac Jones over?
I don't think they've ever started. I think it was just the fact that they got this guy. Belichick didn't have nobody else. So I don't believe that Mac Jones wants to be on the Patriots, and I don't believe that Belichick ever wanted him to be on the Patriots.
I disagree with that comment. Mac Jones wants to be on the Patriots. Everybody in the organization still raves about Mac Jones except one guy.
Me. I was telling him not. I was saying that this guy.
You're not part of the organization, so you don't count. Except for Bill Belichick. And this, to me, is Bill just being stubborn because, and I don't agree with Mac Jones going outside the organization ask for help. I find it very interesting. This isn't a new story that broke this week. It's been out since January. But where he went, we just found out. And that was the University of Alabama, which I thought was very interesting because their offensive coordinator is now the New England's offensive coordinator.
Do you think that's going to help Mac Jones have a better season?
I do, 100%. Bill O'Brien's going to be in charge of that offense. He's already showing. Not the.
Is this the same Bill O'Brien that had Watson in Texas?
It's the same Bill O'Brien who had a very good offense in New England when he was a coordinator here before, or ran the offense. I don't think he had the title, but he ran the offense.
Yeah, I don't believe that.
Team scored points, by the way, and I think Deshaun Watson's numbers were pretty good. Pretty good.
Yeah, but they had one thing. They had one thing that the Patriots don't have besides Watson.
D. Hopkins.
Yeah, they had options. They had because even that Texas team with Watson didn't have a decent run. They didn't have an okay running game. I mean, it was.
Again, that team. No, they didn't have it was okay with. I can't remember the kid's name now.
But they were big enough in the 3 and 4 up to the 4 linemen to protect Watson, and Watson was fast enough to get out of trouble, and he had fast enough D Hop to get.
By the way, Bill O'Brien did get to the Texans to the playoffs fairly consistently early in his tenure there, so he couldn't win in the playoffs because the team just wasn't good enough, either too young or not deep enough on defense. But
no, their O-line was horrific.
Well, I think Mac Jones, the Patriots and Bill Belichick, and I rarely speak ill of Bill Belichick, did Mac Jones a huge disservice last year in his second year, a huge year for a quarterback's growth by putting 2 people in charge of that offense who should never have been there. I have lots of respect for Matt Patricia. Should not have been coaching that offense last year at all.
Again, but that's not on Matt Patricia.
No, it's on Bill Belichick. That's what I just.
I've been saying this for the last 3 or 4 seasons that Bill's past his time. He should be up in the middle and up in management and executive. And coaching is passing because this is a different type of league now. So
things better look a lot different this year. I'll be joining your tune because things like this.
But come on, I've been saying it for the last 3 seasons, man.
Well, but that has been true till now, because now I'm
Okay.
all right, Carlos. Great job today.
Thank you.
Tuning in. Watch us next Friday, and we'll see if Keith's head stays intact for that show. Guys, have a great
guys.
We'll see you Sunday with the stream of consciousness show. Bye-bye.
Happy Easter, guys.
Happy Easter.